About the same time I was trying to photograph Lowell's workshop, fortuitously, Bill told me about some work he'd done with a graduated background. I'd never heard of this before. It's a large, heavy piece of paper coated with some kind of polymer. It morphs seamlessly from completely white through all shades of gray to completely black. What it does is eliminate the need for and the hassle of backdrops. Just put something on the graduated background, light it up, and you can photograph it purely in all its glory, with a background that fades into infinity, or with the horizon if you like. When I saw the possibilities that the graduated background opened up, I immediately thought about Lowell's tools. What if I took some of those odd old oil cans of Lowell's and put them on a neutral background? How much detail could I get out of them? If I couldn't get Lowell's workshop as a landscape, maybe I could get it if I treated each tool as a still life. So that's how the project started, as a shrine to Lowell's most beautiful tools. And when I first took some of his tools to the table in my basement where I was working, I soon realized that I wanted to get much closer to them than my lens's focal length would permit me. So I bought some cheap extension tubes and a set of 3 close-up lenses. None of these things actually magnify the image. They just allow me to place the lens within a few inches of the object and still focus. I was struck by the beauty of things that hadn't been made to be beautiful. And I was especially drawn to marks that history left on things, the dents, the nicks, the scratches, the worn and chipped places, the way something rusts first in this place and not in these other places, or how the handle of a screwdriver darkens over the decades with the use of grimy hands. By the time I finished photographing Lowell's collection, which took a couple of months, I was really on a roll. And I began to look at every object in my house and imagine what it would look like sitting on the graduated background and lit by 600 watts. Anything, it seemed, could be made to look ravishingly beautiful. For example, on a short walk with Maria last fall, I found a magnolia pod studded with bright red seeds covered in this luscious brown fibers like fur. And I noticed the stem that held the pod to the tree itself was a perfect fabric of black and white diamonds. And later in that same walk, there was a bottle cap glinting on the asphalt of the road, rusted and crushed. And it struck me as an object to be photographed. Or was I going crazy? Was I just taking this too far? Everything I looked at seemed to reward my attention. So this was how the original project of photographing some of Lowell's tools expanded to include any picture I took on the graduated background. So the project was basically an exercise to see how much detail I could tease out of small objects without investing a lot in camera gear. And when I found I liked the pictures, I decided to make a video slideshow in order to share them. And it didn't take me long to figure out that I needed a script, that I also had to use words, because a slideshow accompanied by music or silence is a worn-out idea. So if I'm going to go to the trouble of making a film, I'm going to use both audio and visual. my problem was I underestimated the difficulty of writing this voiceover. I knew I didn't want to talk about things as they appear on screen in the way a family slideshow works. Here we are, vacationing in Maine, 1956, and I knew I didn't want to do a art history class kind of slideshow. But if I didn't do either of those kinds of slideshows, what was I going to write that wouldn't distract from the images? The pictures have to stand or fall by themselves. Only the pictures can persuade us that they're beautiful. That much is obvious. So, as I'm trying to overcome this impossible contradiction, that is, on the one hand, I vowed to write a script, and on the other hand, the almost certain fact that any script I could write would only sabotage the photographs. All the time I'm trying to write this voiceover, I'm besieged by a scathing interior monologue of self-doubt. It goes something like, these pictures are terrible, all framed symmetrically, no edge to any of them. They're technically poor, the background is dusty, the lighting sucks, my browns keep creeping into the grays, the white is inconsistent. I feel like I'm just contemplating my navel, wasting time, a dilettante, a naif. And then, to top it all off, I begin talking about being in the now. So, give me a break. The harder I worked on the voiceover, the more I saw that whatever magic had happened in the photos, it had happened in the photos themselves. All I had to do was show them. And other people can decide what they think. Because I've made up my mind. I think they're beautiful. The thing that enabled me to overcome the persuasiveness of my own negativity is that every time I settled down to look closely at the photographs, I remembered how much I liked them. I wanted to honor them with the story of their making, how it felt when I took them, how I discovered the power of the camera to transform, how a bottle cap comes to be beautiful. So my voiceover turns out to be a confession. I have a weakness for this kind of beauty. I don't know what it means. I love it. And I ask you to join me in viewing these shrines to the world of things. Or don't. Well, that would be the whole story, except for one thing. I haven't talked about Dirk's contribution. When I started this tape, I still hadn't decided where to include Dirk. So I guess I'll just add him to the end here. Early on, I sent Dirk some of the photographs, and he liked them. When he wrote back, he said something about how they approached pure meaning. I asked him what he meant by that. He referred me to Scott McCloud's book, Understanding Comics. A great book, but I just got lost in the complexity of McCloud's taxonomy of images. So when I still didn't get what pure meaning was, Dirk sent back a clarifying email that really struck me and stuck with me. And I wanted to incorporate his thoughts into the script. If the photographs had approached pure meaning, then that would certainly be something to incorporate into the script, right? But every time I tried to put it into the script turned to stone. After I mentioned pure meaning, I couldn't write another word. So here I'll try to paraphrase what Dirk wrote about physical beauty and what he calls the tender appreciation of a thing that guides us as we create pictures. Before we had language, we, as a species, probably drew pictures in order to show what we mean. The Chinese, the Egyptians, the Maya drew their words. Written language started as pictures. The picture, the mark, the drawing, they're all able to stand for the thing itself. All literacy, all recorded lore are a spin-off of this, what Dirk calls the magic power of indication. It's the ability of the mark to stand for the thing it's pointing to. So a mark makes a point that stays, that continues to make its point. And how do we make our mark? When we focus intently on something, we learn to appreciate it tenderly. This is Dirk's word for it, and I think it's the right one. It's this tenderness, a tenderness born of the intensity of our gaze. This tenderness teaches the hand to draw and the eye to photograph and transfuses our love of that thing into 2 dimensions. Dirk says that when the cavemen discovered this, the game was over. Everything else was bullshit. Art was born, and it was the power of indication that had created it.